Hi, I'm Peggy at Headshots by Peggy, and today the award-winning Merrick McCartha is going to co-host with me as we have the legendary Bill Duke with us. He's an actor, director, writer, poet. Is there anything that you don't do?
Accountant.
He's not an accountant. There you go. Well, Bill, first of all, I want to thank you for coming out here and being on this vlog.
Pleasure.
I read your book, and first of all, you have led a pretty amazing life.
I've been very fortunate in a lot of ways, as you saw. Some pain, but a lot of pleasure also, so no complaints.
Yeah. So kind of tell us, I mean, you've been in the industry for a while, and I like the one thing that you said towards the end of your book, that we're not in the film industry anymore, we're in the media industry, and I think it's important that people realize that you know, they need to understand what it is that's going on in the industry right now.
Well, I you know, as I say, many times young people come into this industry with passion. There's nothing wrong with passion, right. And I think we have to have it because we're very fortunate we make a living at, you know, what we want to do with our lives, and many times that doesn't happen. But to keep up with the paradigm shift in our industry from a business perspective, I think is as equally important as our passion. And we've gone from film and television to media. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about virtual reality, augmented reality, cell phone apps. We're talking about online. We're talking about the fact that Netflix and Amazon are not TV channels, but they're getting Emmys, and that they're showing their movies in theaters and on their networks. And I think they're spending a few $1 billion this year on content. So I think we have to be understanding of that, of how it shifted paradigm-wise. But also, other aspect of it is opportunity. And I just shot a film several months ago with Steven Soderbergh.
Mm-hmm.
High Flying Bird.
Yes, it's on High Flying Bird. It's on Netflix right
now. Oh, no, we've seen it.
Yes, and it was shot with 5 iPhone 7 Pluses.
He shot that with iPhones. We saw the other one that about the woman that was in a mental facility.
Yes.
Where he was all on iPhone. This is the same deal, huh?
This is the 3rd time he's done it.
Wow.
And
wow.
It's it was an amazing experience, and there was, I think, maybe 2 or 3 people on a lighting crew. Mm-hmm. It was mostly shot with available light, and when they did the dolly shots, they rolled them around in a wheelchair. So what I'm saying about, the reason I'm mentioning that is that there's really nobody stopping us.
Right.
We're the only ones stopping us. And I think if we have a good story, if we have something to say, that doesn't mean we should not learn the craft of writing, telling stories, character arcs and story arcs. That's imperative. But in terms of getting it done, mm-hmm. I mean, if you have an iPhone, Tangerine was shot on an iPhone, and several other people are shooting. And then you deal with the fact that Issa Rae, who started her career with webisodes, mm-hmm. and now has a major deal with HBO.
Yeah.
And then if you look at It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, mm-hmm. webisodes, they've been on the air for 10 years. It should tell us something. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not putting down the old Hollywood model of come out here and get lucky and audition and show your pictures and, you know, the rejection business. But at the same time, there's opportunity now that did not exist when I came along. Mm-hmm. The internet did not exist when I came along. And when the first iPhone came out, I thought it was so cool, but it was this big. I don't know if you guys remember that. You had to carry a box with it. Mm-hmm. No, it's...
No, yeah, that's a lot to go into as well, because you've done, I mean, you've gone through this whole transformation of the industry. I mean, you've started in iconic films, you know, the one I remember first was Car Wash, which, mm-hmm. growing up, and then you directed, I think, every major TV show on television for years through the 80s and 90s. And then I think you do a lot more films now, it seems, but it's just interesting from your perspective to see how that changed before your eyes. You came from a place where, you walk into a casting director's office, hand them your headshot and resume, and say, hey, let me know, or you could, find a board tour and get an audition by walking in, and that changed to this new industry where everything's digital, where there's none of that. It's all managed by agents and managers on a computer. None of that happened for quite some time. And then now, like you said, you don't need to actually go out. You can actually create your own, which makes things more accessible for you to create. How does that? But now it seems to be this wave of that. So how are you? What are your thoughts on being able to break into the industry from creating like that? Because there's certain segments that go off the Instagram series or web series, and other parts of the industry are like, no, they stick to the traditional. You're brought up, you went to Tisch yourself, you were brought into a big agency, and then they package you into these major films. I mean, where do you see do you see one overtaking the other?
Well, it's a very interesting time. It's a good question because it's happening so quickly as we speak. If you look at this, the major article just came out in Variety yesterday about the packaging and the Writers Guild and all of that's happening, and how over the years talent has been cheated out of, and now there's anger, and once the anger passes, I'm wondering how that's going to be in terms of our industry. You have Disney acquiring Fox.
Yes.
I think what they say in the paper yesterday, 4,000 people lost their jobs, and that's just the beginning. The question is, what are the jobs in the future going to be?
Right, and that's what I mean. You talked about how the accessibility is there with the web series, but now it's like there's no need for all that crew because Steven Soderbergh can do it with like 5 people on a light, So
the thing that does not go away, in my opinion, is the ability to tell a compelling story. Okay. I see a lot of action films, and I don't care about anybody that dies. There's no ability to hook you into the humanity of that human being, and that takes craft.
Yeah.
And Joseph Campbell is the master. From Spielberg to George Lucas, they use Hero with 1,000 Faces, Campbell's book, as a guide. But today, younger people, I don't think they know who Joseph Campbell is was. And as a result, it's mostly from passion or ideas. But there's a craft to writing. There's a craft to storytelling. And I'm praying that we don't lose that. I want to care about the people that I'm watching on screen, about the protagonist, and I want to, understand why the antagonist is doing what he's doing, and I want them to be 2 strong elements, and in a story that has a purpose that connects with my humanity, on some level.
No, I agree. I think a lot of the times we see that where it's all about the explosions or how great the digital effects are. And then, I was just telling someone a couple weeks ago, I was watching Predator. This is still one of the top guy movies ever made. So Predator, it's special effects, it's explosions, but you know what? There's 5 guys in this team, and they are all very interesting and very different people. And your character in that was one that I connect to because I'm watching the story and I'm looking at the dialogue of these other characters. Your dialogue was different. You came up with things that I wouldn't expect to have heard. The one scene where you're running to the field and you're singing Little Richard. I'm like, you just come up with that? That could have been great. That was one of those moments. So I wonder, is that something that you do with your films? And I agree that that's part of what you're talking about, is connecting and making real characters, people that you care about in the story, and making that. That's why that film is great, because you don't just have the effects and explosions and the creature, but you've got real people that you care about in this story, this adventure.
I hope that tradition continues. I try my best. In Deep Cover and Sister Act 2 and Hoodlum, just 3 of my films, we really focused on, and there's action and there's drama and there's singing and dancing and stuff, but who is that?
Right.
and how do I relate to that person? And you know, what is it? The show that was on HBO for years, I forgot, and he was a serial killer.
Dexter.
Dexter. It's showtime.
I hated watching Dexter
Really?
because I liked him.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
killing people,
Yeah,
but he's killing people that are worse than him.
I had for years that was my ringtone, the theme song to Dexter. I feel you.
But that's brilliant.
Yeah,
You're not supposed to like him,
yeah.
right? At
Right.
all, because he's a serial killer.
He's a serial killer.
But they found something in there. You know what I mean? And so, great storytelling. That's what I'm attracted to.
Yeah.
And I hope that people coming into the business understand that, who are directors and writers. Also, actors. It's a business of rejection. People tell you to get over it, but you go for, let's say, 6 auditions a month, and everybody says no, 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 no. And they say, "Well, get over it." No, it's hard to get over
Well, you know,
it.
it's not even no, it's nothing.
That's right.
I go to auditions, I hear nothing, and it's
Zero.
unprofessional for me to ask for the no. It's
I know.
unprofessional, so I
Yes.
got to sit there and just be like, okay,
Take
they
it.
didn't call me, on to the next, and I got to go move on.
Yeah, well, yeah, move on, but does it have an impact on us?
When I work and prepare for an audition, and I go on there and I just do something for that casting room, and I know I can feel their exhale when I'm done, and I walk out and I don't get a call in 2 days. Yeah, it affects me a little bit.
Yes.
It affects me a little bit. I can definitely see that.
And I like to talk to young actors because they tell you to get over it, but it's not that easy. And I know when I was starting, you see my book, my way of dealing with the rejection was drugs and alcohol. And because what it did was help kill the pain temporarily. It dealt with the symptoms, not the cause.
Do you feel that was I mean, you talk about that a lot too, about how you have this, great breaks and then these long periods of drought, and you're saying that was kind of what led you this, because you started doubting yourself, I think is what you're saying.
Well, it's a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, you talked about that, yeah.
And no one really prepares you for it. You kind of like have to negotiate the waters yourself. And some waters have waves and some have other kinds of things mixed in. And so it does impact you. And I look at the young people out there now in the music business and film business they were up here like 3 years ago. And haven't heard from them recently.
Right.
And then they're in the news, they've done something that I think is relatively self-destructive. But I have compassion for them. I've been there, I know what that feels like, and
Yeah, I think you
Just
talk
gotta
about in
pray
your
for
book
them.
about how you're lucky there was no YouTube back when you were younger. The stuff that you got into. That is
certain things that I don't want to be seen ever.
right, exactly. I'm sure there's stuff that didn't make the book then.
You're a wise man. You're a wise man, yes. Yes.
Wow. Yeah. I could say maybe the golden age of television when you were directing and doing those shows and in Hollywood at that time, the 70s, the 80s, even into the 90s, the kind of things that would happen that could pull you into that. And I mean, I don't think I got where you said how you were able to break away from it. You talk about how you were able to get into meditation, I think, but what was like the thing to get you to break away from that destructive?
Well, there were a couple of things, 2 things. One day I had no employment, no money for a long time, and I was losing my apartment, and so I was basically homeless almost, and I was on the street begging for money. And I come from a family of very proud people. My father worked 3 jobs, my mother worked 2, and they worked 7 days a week. And They never went on welfare. They never asked for social assistance. They were very proud people. But there I was, begging for money, for food, and for rent. One day, this older black lady, she comes toward me and I said, "Ma'am, can I get some change?" She looks at me, she just passes. So I asked the next couple of people, and then I feel a tap on my back. I turned around, it's the same older black lady. And I said, "Ma'am, you have some change." So she just, it felt like 20 minutes, but it was like 5 or 10 seconds. She just looked in my face and my eyes. And she says, "Baby, do your mama know you out here doing this?" God sends angels sometimes, you know. It's like it was one of those moments where, wow, if my mother and father saw me out here doing this, it would be not a good thing. And I'd hit that low point, you know. Another time was when salvation, I call it. I was still getting drunk and high, but I got very fortunate, and I got in a play called Unexposed Die Natural Death on Broadway, and it was very successful. Mel Van Peebles wrote it, and the great Gilbert Moses directed it, and it was doing very well, but I was still getting high, and I would be late for rehearsals, and then I'd be late for performances. And my friend Aida Tangamana, who's a good friend of mine, said, "Bill, you're really blowing it. You're going down fast, you know." And so I said, "Yeah." She said, "You know, you should try meditation because the drink is not going to help you." Then I went to, and Ted Lange can tell you this story because he was my understudy. I was late one day for a performance, and they put him on instead of me. I had to sit in the balcony and watch. And I was depressed and felt bad about myself. And she said, "Just try meditation, TM." I said, "I don't want that hippie stuff." She says, "Try it." So I tried it. She initiated me, and I tried it for like a week, but I was still taking drugs. And so she said, "Look, if you meditate without taking any drugs for 3 weeks or so, I will buy you an ounce of anything you want if you still want to take them." I said, "Bet."
The addict, and you're like, "Yeah."
I can't wait. You know? And first week, I felt a little calmer, I guess you can say. Second week, something started to happen. But the third week, what the drugs had done for me in terms of me calming myself and centering and getting rid of stress, the meditation did it. And so that was, I think, 1974, 75. I haven't taken a drug since. So with those two things, and then the third was God graced me with a mentor named Lloyd Richards. He was the first black director, one of the first black directors on Broadway, directed The Raisin and the Sun. And I met him at BU and then at NYU, and he gave my first job out here. And I was going to go back to New York, and he said, "No, you're staying here. I see something in you." I said, "Okay, I'll stay for a couple of months," and I did, and things started to take off.
Right. That's when you got Car Wash?
Yes, sir.
Car Wash. Now, the character in Car Wash, I think that there were two names. It was Abdullah.
Abdullah, yes.
And you were, in that movie, your character, you were this guy who, it was your job, you're going to come in, you were brooding, kind of, you know, you were the militant, and they were trying to get you to, hey, come around to things, and you're like, no, this isn't right. So you were doing something, I can't remember what you were doing outside of work, but you'd come into work and you basically had this thing like, hey, you know, there's much more going on than this car wash place that you guys are.
Angry young black man.
Yeah. And I remember that, that movie was a lot of different things. I mean, it was groundbreaking in the sense that I think for the first time I'd seen, the theme song of the movie was a major commercial hit itself. You know, you could see Car Wash and everyone knows what you're talking about. Even today, you know, it's still the song. You can throw a Car Wash anywhere and everyone knows the song Car Wash.
The Pointer Sisters, yes.
Yes, the Pointer Sisters. And then you got icons like Rich Pryor in there.
George Carlin.
George Carlin, Danny DeVito. I didn't realize.
Yes, he
was there.
did. Danny DeVito was there.
Wow.
Richard Carlin. And Great Ivan Dixon also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said you did audition for that, or you didn't have to? How do they know of you from?
Well, Michael Schultz, the director, was a good friend of mine,
Mhm.
and we knew each other in New York, Negro Ensemble Company, and we became great friends. And when I moved out to LA, we kept in touch.
Mhm.
And so when the opportunity for Car Wash came along, he called me, and he and Ivan just sat down with me and said, talked about the character and what I thought about it, and gave me the job.
Oh, well.
Very fortunate.
Yeah, because Peggy and I, we talk on this, or Peggy does talk to other people in the industry about their process for the industry, succeeding in the industry. And her profession is headshots, and how that's a marketing tool for actors coming to the business who are not well known. I mean, you don't have to show a headshot when you walk in anywhere, you know who you are. But for new actors that the show usually addresses, that's one of the things that they typically start with. But back then, it was still the same for you. Did you have headshots when you were coming up, or did you just?
That's the only thing we had.
Right.
And
Okay.
but now they want headshots, plus they want you to. I mean, friends of mine are auditioning now, and there's two things. You can go to a little studio and they film you doing the audition,
Mm-hmm. Self-tape.
or you can get your camera and
Mhm.
take a selfie
Mm-hmm.
and read or audition for it. But even that's changing. So as you know, it's
Yeah, I do a lot of self-tape auditions for
So-
people. A
so
lot
you
of people
know.
come into my studio for that.
Mhm.
It's and you were talking about people not knowing how to tell stories and how that's still something. And even in photography, it's the same thing. I feel like people come up, they get a camera, and they love photography, so they're a photographer. But there's actually rules, and there's actually ways to make things look better. And I often worry, is this going to be a lost art as well? Because everybody has a camera in their back pocket. Is actual professional photography. You hope that people still learn body types and lighting and posing and how people look on camera. And I think that's important, that actors know how they look on camera. And it's easy because they do have a cell phone, so they can practice and see how they look on camera. It's something that people need to understand, that this is their job. They're an actor. How you look on camera matters.
yes.
And so you should know how you're holding your body, or the little things that you're doing affect how it reads on camera.
Well, it's called motion pictures. It's pictures
It's
in
still,
motion.
yeah, it's still called that. You're right.
Pictures in motion, right?
Yeah.
And I was inspired by the great Gordon Parks, one of the greatest photographers ever.
Mm-hmm.
And what he taught was, composition,
Mm-hmm.
depth of field. Someone looks at, photography inspired me as a director,
Mm-hmm.
balancing the frame with these different elements, and not only what's here, but what is that background?
Mm-hmm.
What message does it visually send? From the colors to whatever is in that.
Right.
What story does that tell?
Mm-hmm.
And the surrounding elements. And I hope that's going to continue to be taught. It's not just like snapping something, as you know. It's about
Exactly.
what is the visual information that you're putting forth for the observer. What are you saying with that? And because there's a story to it.
Exactly.
And so,
And the young people, or people of any age that are starting out, they have the advantage because they can produce things with something that's affordable, but they still need to get the training. They still need to get a foundation, a firm foundation, and understand the basics of how things work. I don't think that's ever going to change. You still need to have that foundation.
it's a craft, but it's a interesting challenge
Mm-hmm.
because there are people online making millions of dollars a week or month with a cell phone, and what they do is they're eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or opening
Or
packages.
opening packages.
So
That's
break
their-
that down to me, please.
Yeah, hey.
What?
But that's
You know what I'm
another
saying?
thing. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that, but there are people looking to promote projects that look at that and consider, like, oh yeah,
That's exactly.
you got these followers. I don't
You've
care that
got-
you only open packages. You got a fan base for my
I don't
production.
care that you're not talented. You've got all these followers.
So I think I've seen like 7 projects or so in production or in development. When you're directing something, you're looking at projects. Is that something you look at? Because I've come across things where it's a posting, it's a submit or whatever. Also, give us your Instagram name or tell us how many followers you have. Is that ever something that comes into your mind when you're looking to cast someone in your project?
Well, of course, you want the eyeballs,
Sure.
but you want the talent also. But what's happening now is, and I've been in these experiences where I'm in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
the executive at the studio is here, and the social media person is here.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say, well, who do you want to cast in this, Bill? Well, I want to, I think Jeff Goldblum would be great for this part. He's actually look at this guy and says, he has these many social media followers. So you have to balance your passion for what you want
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the business
Right.
reality of what is asked for. And it's like, I used to battle and fight a lot, and I lost a lot of battles, but you really can't be playing checkers in a chess game,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to lose a battle to win the war.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you lose a battle doesn't mean you lose the war.
Right.
You lost that battle. And distinguishing and balancing those out are things that I think writer, director, actor, producer, whatever, social media person has to deal with that at some point. And if you don't, hey, you may have your film, and your film is the best film you ever made, and been sitting in your closet for 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you begin to, or you put it out on social media, but you have no marketing
Mm-hmm.
behind it,
Mm-hmm.
budget-wise? I mean, so it's a balance of things. Make any sense?
Yeah.
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 It's a necessity, a necessary evil.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I think that being such a industry icon yourself, you still have to fight you used to have to fight some time about these things and have to deal with that, but it's it's something that you're sort of accepting as reality in a sense that you're not going to burn any bridges by saying no, I'm not basing this on any part of social media. You kind of try to weigh things out or balance things out.
Well, I'm offered acting roles, and we all want to work,
Mm-hmm.
If I read a script and it's totally, I guess this is impractical, but antithetical
Mm-hmm.
to what I'm about, it's my agents get very unhappy with it.
Mm-hmm.
I make that decision, but I mean, once you put your name on something, it outlasts your physical life on this earth
Mm-hmm.
and your children. And I've made some decisions in the past. I tried to buy the footage back from the network. I couldn't get it,
Mm.
but I wish I
Wow, really?
I could have.
Yeah, I used to. I mean, I did a lot of independent student films starting out, and I used to do this thing where if I ever got a script from like a student filmmaker, and they had a role for me, and in the role that my dialogue had the words "for Christ's sakes," I'd say no, I'm not doing that because I never say that. I'm like, no,
Right.
this is not a term that people
Mhm.
use in normal language. Like, I'm not. I'm sorry. I know it's just student film, but.
Mm-hmm.
But then I try to get away from being that judgmental about it. Or I'll say sure, but I won't say it on the shoot day. I'll do something else and make it more real to me. But yeah, so I think one of the projects that you have coming is something called Afro Sheen. Is it Afro Sheen?
Yes.
Afro Sheen. And it's a apparently about a story. It takes place in Detroit, Michigan, where I'm from,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about someone who's tutoring someone else to be on this local dance show. When I was growing up, there was a local dance show in Detroit called The Scene.
Yes. That's what it's about.
It is about The Scene. Wow. Okay, I got to tell all my friends at Cass in Detroit that there's a movie directed by Bill Duke about The Scene.
We're still trying to get funding for it for
Yeah.
a long time. You know, Jay White, who's my writing partner, on that, you know. But it deals with, you know, the crisis of the time in terms of young people. It applies till today. You know, it's like young guys living in an impoverished neighborhood, and his father went to jail, and now his father's out, and their relationship, and how he wasn't there for his son. That's one thing. But also, it's about the decisions the boy has to make. He is struggling. He's helping pay the rent for his mother's apartment. The father's not working right now. And so he works these jobs that he can take. But he's very talented as a musician, as a singer and a dancer. But his father went down that road and failed. And he struggles and struggles to get recognition, nothing. The drug dealer in the neighborhood says, "Oh man, you're struggling, man. You know something, you're really talented. You know, people should be respecting you more than that. You know something, she's making some, your mother's not paying her rent, right? Let me help you out. Take this around 2 blocks. And how much is mother's rent? Okay, done." So he becomes a person that
Runs.
and then his father says, stop doing that because, and then his father convinced him just to try out for the scene.
Okay.
And so I'll get to see the rest of it to get it, but
Yeah, no,
it's
I know
compelling.
that.
It's a good story.
Yeah, it's The Scene. When I was growing up, my sister and I grew up in Detroit. Our aunts and uncles, you know, everyone aspired to be on the show because nationally there was at the time American Bandstand,
Yes.
but in Detroit it was The Scene. And we were in Detroit. I think American Bandstand is filmed in LA. I think that we were like, this is The Scene. So it was like you were a celebrity if you were on The Scene. And they were like, I don't know how, they just danced, but somehow the audience community created their own storyline of what was happening between the dancers. There's never a word of dialogue in this scene. I mean, the host had his own shtick, which was great, but it was funny how this community all banded around this show and made up our own soap opera of what was going on in the show, The Scene. So yeah, I'm really excited to see that come through. I'm hoping that
It gave access and it gave a voice.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, the great John Singleton just died, as you know.
Yeah.
It's really painful for all of us, you know.
Yeah.
But what he and Spike Lee did, Spike on the East Coast and John on the West Coast, he gave a voice to those kids. They gave voices to those kids, you know, because they were perceived as these hoodlum, horrible, negative little kids just doing bad things. What Spike and John did was go into the family and the neighborhood and the circumstances and the unfair treatment of those neighborhoods from a state and federal point of view. And it's like, you know, and The Scene and what's this, John Cornelius,
Soul Train.
Soul Train, gave an expression of that in a positive way. You know, it was, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I came up in an impoverished neighborhood, and some of us made it out, and some of us didn't.
Yeah.
And unless you're there and you see the circumstances, you don't really understand the desperation. And desperation leads to, I was telling this story, I have a foundation called the Duke Media Foundation, and we teach young people from the age of 14 to around 18, high school students, media literacy and financial literacy. And I was taught a lesson a number of months ago. Well, I think it was over a year ago now. This friend of this young boy wanted me to speak to this young boy, and he was like 15 years old. And he was selling drugs in a gang, getting into trouble all the time. And I'm telling him, if you come into my foundation, we will give you access to education, give you some, because you always talk to me, you want to be in the business, and we'll give you some tools in which you can be in the business. And I said, but you got to stop selling the drugs, you got to stop being in a gang, etc. He said, and he looks at me and he says, I really appreciate that. But he said, I'm 15 years old. I have a sister who is 9 and a brother who is 7. And my mother's on crack. And he said, my mother doesn't work. And I'm 15 years old, I'm the head of my household. Yeah. And he said, I sell drugs to pay my mother's rent. And he said, I'm willing to come into your foundation, but are you going to give me money to pay my mother's rent?
But that's because that's a reality.
That's his reality.
It stopped me.
Yeah, that's reality.
Because that's what he's facing.
Yeah.
And people judge these children based on their behavior without an understanding of the context of that behavior. And I just think we're graduating young people from high schools with 2nd and 3rd grade reading skills. They're now determining in certain places where to build prisons based on 3rd grade. I mean, I'm a little alarmed because I feel that our future is dependent upon our support of our children. And something has to change.
Yeah.
Something has to change.
Absolutely.
And the education system isn't designed for kids to succeed in the world we live in. There's just a lot of changes that need to be made.
Yeah.
A lot of changes.
And it's interesting because it depends. I mean, I grew up in Detroit, as far as I'm concerned, it's a predominantly black community. Every school I went to, we were taught everything about black history, everything about the civil rights movement, all that we knew. It was like, this was part of our plan. They were white, black, it doesn't matter what color teacher, but we all were taught this, and we're all taught to, this is where you need to, you're bound to succeed in life. And it took me probably not till I got outside of Detroit to realize that that's not how it is for most black communities around the country. And they're not taught that, which was saddening for me. And we're getting away from business, but this is a big issue because if we take away in school the ability to express artistically, the ability to learn about things like economics and home economics and financial literacy, like we talk about, and just focus on these things that only help them on a narrow range of things in the real world, and that's the wrong path to go down.
When I was in school, they had a thing called shop.
Mm-hmm.
Remember shop?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They taught you to build things and take
Solve
things apart.
problems.
Remember those things?
Yeah.
I mean, the pragmatic day to day has been taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that, there's this gentleman on 60 Minutes, I think it was a month ago now, this Asian gentleman who was a robotics expert and artificial intelligence expert, who projected the potential that in 15 to 18 years, it could be a global unemployment rate of 40%.
Wow.
And they're talking about the first thing to go would be drivers, because they have these
Self-driving cars now.
but these gigantic tractor and trailers. Eventually going to be able to drive themselves across country,
The trucking industry. Yeah.
drive back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They don't get tired. No vacations. No fees. No food.
No pension they have to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to my bank last week and I noticed something interesting. Where there used to be 9 teller windows, used to be 9 people, and now there's 4 tellers and these 5. You put your card in there.
Mm-hmm.
You can put money in, take it out. You can do whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
And And then I was at Trader Joe's the other day, and there's a long line. I just went to the automatic checkout, buzzed my food in. They gave me a bag, and there's a great video on YouTube called "Humans Need Not Apply." You ever seen it?
No, you mentioned it in your book.
You have to see it. Humans Need Not Apply. And they've done a great job of research in terms of what this really means in the future. And anyone who's involved with children has to, I think, see that. And then there's a great thing on TED Talk. This billionaire, it's called Pitchforks. And what he's begging his fellow billionaires to do is to help re-support the middle class because it's being lost. And he talks about, a critical mass of people who feel they have nothing to lose. And he's talking about there's no gate, no amount of guards or anything. That if a critical mass of desperate people come together, that's not good for anybody. So he said they may not have guns, but they may come after us with pitchforks.
Sure. Yeah. It's funny too, because I know that you grew up and you talk a lot about your time in the civil rights era with the assassinations of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And at the time, I think most people didn't know, but Hoover, the head of the FBI, was scared about this very thing with the black community. He thought, if we don't suppress all these elements, then they can rise up and take over, or at least make their stake. And that was like his, I think, overarching goal is to suppress. And that's why you have the infiltrations of the Black Panthers and, these people that were supposedly secretly hired to follow, record, and to get dirt on people like Martin Luther King Jr. It's...
I'm encouraged by some people who really have money, and I have friends who, some are very, very wealthy, and they do some very positive things. It's quiet, because they don't want people to know necessarily. But there are some people with money who haven't forgotten. And then there are other people who 10 boats, 5 houses, trying to fill that hole, I was very encouraged by this gentleman, this billionaire at Morehouse the other day.
Yeah, at the time of this taping yesterday, at the Morehouse commencement ceremony,
that was
he
paid
agreed to pay the entire
all
classes.
of the class,
Oh, wow.
all of their debt.
Yeah.
That was
And he also said you got to pay this forward when you
pass it
back,
forward. That's what he said.
Yes.
Pass it forward.
You come back and you do the same. Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that too.
I love that.
Yeah, it's more what we need. It's more what we need.
So I'm going to put links down below so that people can click on it. How do they find out more about your foundation?
They go to the DukeMediaFoundation.org. Well, that's the one. DukeMediaFoundation.org. DukeMediaFoundation.org. And also, I want to say this. Some people have come to me and they want to sponsor for me a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Oh, nice. Yes, absolutely. You don't have one yet?
No, I don't. So Robert Walker, you can go to his site online, and Robert Walker is raising funds, and he's also putting together collaborations so it could possibly happen. So, and it wasn't my idea. He just came to me and said, "Bill, I think you deserve a star." And for the last almost year, he's been working with me, and it's been great.
Yeah. And I think most people don't know that I think the requirement is you've got to have a fan club sponsor your star. Like you can't just pay for it as any of us would.
Yes.
You got to have a fan club sponsor and put it up.
And they have to approve it over a period of time. So we're in the process of it being approved possibly, but he's raising funds and also. So I'm very extremely appreciative to him for doing that.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Sneak
absolutely.
up to Halloween Highland and catch that. Pass everybody.
Great.
That's fun. That's great. Well, again, thank you for talking
No,
to us.
I want to thank you so much. It's great.
Thank
Both
you.
of you. Great questions and great show.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. So get on Amazon and buy his book. Find out more about his foundation and find out more about this Star on Hollywood Walk of Fame. I'm excited about that. Most importantly, you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was really great.
Thank you.
Take so much time
That
with
was
us.
really
Oh,
great.
my pleasure. My pleasure. It was fun.
I will be here all day with you about the stuff you've been
Oh,
in,
yeah,
so I'm
he-
glad
yeah.
I didn't curb it.